Alright, what's up everyone, I'm Loki, and today we're going to be talking about why the Seahawks ended up losing to the Rams and why they did so poorly in the playoffs. Before we get into the video, I did get my wisdom teeth taken out today, so I look pretty stupid and the right side of my face is really numb still, so it is going to be a little bit weird, but I do want to talk about this because, there's a lot of obvious glaring issues that the Seahawks have. For a little bit of a recap of the wildcard weekend game against the Rams, the Seahawks, of course, played absolutely atrocious on offense. Russell Wilson didn't even complete 50% or more of his passes. He was sacked 5 times. He threw a pretty bad interception on a screenplay that made absolutely no sense. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Our defense honestly played as well as they possibly could when your offense is getting literally nothing going and most of the drives are going to be 3 and outs or at least pretty quick giving the ball back to the opponent. Your defense really can't do too much in that game. And the defense, they did well enough. Of course, we had some broken plays, some broken coverages, and just some bad overall defensive plays. But still, we let up some big plays. But other than that, we played some pretty good defense. It was just a matter of our offense couldn't get going, and our defense had to consistently go back on the field. And when you're on the field so long, you can only do so much. When you just look at the stats, though, the Seahawks run game didn't look too bad. They had well over 100 yards, over 5 yards a carry. They looked good, but running the football really wasn't an option once we went down 10, 17 points. We just got down, and we really never could get back up in the game because we really couldn't get anything going offensively to get points on the board. Now, we did kick some field goals. Jason Myers had an incredible year, didn't miss a field goal, had the longest field goal in the entire league. Michael Dixon is an absolutely amazing punter. Those two guys I really hope we bring back next year because they obviously show that they can be a great special teams unit. But, Russell Wilson, he just had a really bad game, and I think that comes more down to how the offensive scheme was playing rather than how Russell Wilson was playing. Now, I'm not going to say that Russell Wilson had a great game or he did things completely right. Everything just went against him. No, he wasn't doing great. He was missing some throws. Our receivers were dropping some catches. Really, not too many things were going right for the passing game on offense. But when it comes down to scheming, the kind of plays that we were running just didn't make a lot of sense. I'm going to talk about that screenplay that we had to DK Metcalf. We motioned him from the right side to the left side behind Freddie Swain. Now, I love Freddie Swain. He's a great guy. I think as a young player, he'll probably be pretty good for this team as a third option, maybe fourth option for the next few years. But I don't really want him to be the one blocking for a wide receiver screen, and it didn't really show that he could block because the guy just walked right past him. Now, I'd assume the play was to have DK Metcalf come up and catch the ball, and then Freddie Swain was blocking towards the sideline so DK Metcalf could run towards, the line of scrimmage, towards the middle of the field, and then cut up. But it just didn't work because the corner just got right through it. He read it so obviously. It was just really dumb in my opinion. I don't know why you would motion someone into a screen because they obviously know that DK Metcalf was complaining on the sideline. He wanted touches, and you can try to get DK Metcalf touches, but when you motion someone, they're kind of gaining the attention of the defense. You're motioning someone to get the defense to look at them, to make them stand still and expect a catch while the defense has all the free time to move, especially when Russell Wilson's going to lob that pass instead of darting it. It was just an absolutely horrendous play. We deserved to get a pick six. I knew that was going to be a wide receiver screen as soon as DK Metcalf motioned and then just stopped moving. And I'm pretty sure the defense, if I can read that as some random dude who watches football, every defense in the NFL can probably read that and made it super obvious pick six was going to happen. Now, that play was bad, but honestly, I think the entire scheme offensively is just way too simple. We have some really dynamic players in Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. We have some great guys at tight end that we can use in multiple different ways. We have some really good running backs in Rashad Penny, Chris Carson, Carlos Hyde, but we just didn't really use them. We ran the most basic scheme that we possibly could where you run once or twice on first and second down. Maybe you throw on second down. Maybe you throw on first down every now and then, but most of the time you're going to be running first and second down. If it doesn't work, you're throwing on third down, but the defense expects it. And it just gets to a point where it's just so basic when you have such great players like Russell Wilson. I do not remember us running many boot plays where you had Russell Wilson intentionally going out and rolling to the right because the play is designed for him to roll to the right. We had a couple of those early on in the season when we were doing really good in the passing game, but we just stopped doing that once the running backs got healthy. And of course, I know that we want to go to the running backs. We want to run the ball because that's kind of the Seahawks' bread and butter, running the ball hard, doing play actions. But the play actions don't really work too well when teams kind of know what you're doing, especially a divisional team who plays you 2 times a year. For the 3rd time of the year they're going to be playing you. They know what you're going to be doing. You got to throw in some trick plays. You got to throw in some things that you really haven't been doing. You got to figure something out to kind of differentiate the offense going into a game against such a great defense that already knows what you do during the season. But that's something the Seahawks really didn't do. They kind of ran the ball, ran it pretty well. Russell Wilson had to run for his life a couple times. He got sacked a ton. The offensive line didn't do great. I'll talk about that later. But I mean, DK Metcalf, we had some good plays to DK Metcalf. We had a nice little Russell Wilson rollout, and then DK Metcalf kind of saw that he was moving around, decided to cut upfield. They lost him, something the Rams won't do too often. We made them pay. That was a good play. But, I mean, we really didn't do anything other than that. We had a couple nice long field goals from Jason Myers, who continued to not miss. But our offense was just so basic and so predictable. We would run the ball, we'd get stopped, and then we'd pass the ball and look for a huge play. We really would. We just have the most basic scheme, and it's just absolutely disappointing to watch, especially with so many great players that we have on the offensive side. But when it came to the defensive side of the football, we had some pretty bad plays. You know, the Cooper Kupp catch on Jamal Adams. We basically let Robert Woods, I believe, walk straight into the end zone on like a 15-yard play because we didn't guard the entire left side of the field. I mean, we had some pretty bad plays, but you're going to have those as a defense. You're going to have some blown plays as a defense. You're not going to have a perfect game by any defense ever. But it's still, you know, our defense, they did as well as they possibly could. They got some pressure on Jared Goff. They stopped the run sometimes. They did have some pretty big run plays, but, you know, most of the game, the defense played as well as they could. But once the offense just didn't get going, it's kind of how the offense was early on in the season, except for we didn't actually score. You know, where the drives are short, we have some 3-and-outs, make the defense stay on the field too long, they get tired, they start making mistakes. But other than that, they're playing pretty decent. But, you know, unlike the first half of the season, we weren't putting up 30, 40 points. Now, I mentioned it before that I had technical difficulties and I couldn't actually end up posting why the Seahawks won't win the Super Bowl before we actually could play the Rams game. And I'm really disappointed about that because I think two of my key reasons were the reasonings behind why we did so bad. Now, one I've already talked about in this video. It's the simplicity and the predictability of our offense. And two was our defense not playing a great offense. We really didn't get to see that. Our defense, they played pretty well against the Rams. It was just the Rams got too many opportunities to put points up on the defense. And the defense is going to let up some plays, and that's exactly what happened. I don't think the defense played a bad game. I just think the Rams had too many opportunities. And then number three was clearly an issue this game, and that was our offensive line. Now, our offensive line, I think we have some good pieces. I think Dewan Brown's really good. I think Damian Lewis will be the cornerstone of our offensive line for the next probably decade or so. And I'm glad we got Damian Lewis. I hope that we continue to try to draft or pick up good offensive linemen. We just need to try something out because Russell Wilson once again was sacked well over 40 times this season. That's something you don't want to see, especially, you know, some of those sacks come from Russell Wilson trying to make some crazy plays where he's moving around in the backfield. You know, maybe he holds the ball too long trying to look for the big play instead of taking something easy. But still, you know, a lot of those sacks are the offensive line not doing that great and letting some people just get right by. And that was clear in the Rams game. We had about 1 or 2 sacks where Russell Wilson held the ball too long. But we easily had 3, maybe 4 sacks allowed where the offensive line just didn't block well whatsoever. But the Seahawks offensive line, although it is bad, I think there is hope, especially with Damian Lewis there. We have Damian Lewis at the right guard spot who looked really good. We had Dewan Brown at the left tackle, who's basically our only consistent offensive lineman. We need to figure out the center's position because Ethan Posich, or however you say it, ended up having like 16 holding calls last game, and he was letting up, you know, people just walked right by him. You know, he just was not having a good game. Brandon Shell, he's been injured for a lot of the season. I really don't know how he did. I mean, our offensive line just didn't do great as a whole. I think Damian Lewis is a good piece that we can continue to build around. Dewan Brown is going to be a great guy at the left tackle spot for us. But other than that, I think the other 3 positions on the offensive line are completely just changeable and maneuverable. We can do anything with those 3 positions. We might have some money tied up into some of those guys. I'm not sure about the cap situation. I'll be looking at that in a later video where I focus fully on the offensive line. But, I mean, I don't think that we have any real commitment to any of the guys in those other 3 spots because they didn't do very well. Damian Lewis did well. He's a young guy that we drafted. I think he'll be great. And Dewan Brown, he's a great left tackle for us. He's going to continue to be great until he decides he wants to retire, and I hope we keep him until he does decide to retire. But, I mean, we're just not a good offensive line, and that's been clearer and clearer every single year. Russell Wilson hasn't been sacked under 30 times in his career. How are you supposed to have an offensive line that can't protect your quarterback and expect that your passing game is going to do well? Of course, our offensive line has been built a little bit more around running the football, but even then, we have some very horrible run blocking on some plays. But I think the main problem is the scheming. Now, you can make make up for a bad offensive line with good schemes. Like if you run some boot plays, you run some, good play action, some trick plays, some plays that, aren't just simplistic. Have Russell Wilson sit in the pocket, make him run around when the offensive line collapses, and then hope that he can make a good play. And if you have some design plays to get him out of the pocket where the offensive line really doesn't have to do too great, you can do something with a bad offensive line. But we just don't have any great scheming to make up for our bad offensive line. We kind of just throw Russell Wilson in the pocket, probably on a shotgun, where, you tell him, hey, stay up, don't get sacked. Our offensive line might not block for you, but you better get away from those rushers. And you can only do that so much because it's pretty obvious that teams have started to figure out how Russell Wilson escapes from, potential sack makers. He goes up in the pocket most of the time, and then he can, come back around and go to one of his sides. But teams have started to just throw a guy to stop him from going up in the pocket, and they've kind of figured out how he escapes defenders, and they're putting something to try to stop that from happening, and it's working pretty well. Of course, I think next year we need to go in with a completely different scheme. I think we need to basically rebuild the offensive scheme. I think Russell Wilson is an absolutely amazing quarterback. A lot of people are mad at Russell Wilson for doing poorly this game, and I've seen people say, trading Russell Wilson might be an option. It's not going to happen. Russell Wilson is our franchise quarterback. He is an absolutely amazing quarterback. Maybe if we traded for Deshaun Watson could be somewhat near the tier of Russell Wilson for us, but we're not going to trade Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is the guy for Seattle. If Seattle didn't have Russell Wilson these last 4 or 5 years with our horrible offensive lines, basically Russell Wilson's entire career, we would not be that good. Because if we had a kind of pocket quarterback with that bad of an offensive line, we'd be giving up 60, 70 sacks a season easily. But I think going into this offseason, the main focus for the Seahawks has to be offensive line. Now, if we can re-sign Shaquille Griffin, if we can re-sign KJ Wright, if we can extend Jamal Adams, we have amazing offensive pieces. If we can keep Chris Carson, that'd be good. We can get Carlos Hyde back as a number 2, number 3 behind Rashad Penny or in front of Rashad Penny, we'd be fine. But Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, David Moore, we got Freddie Swain, we got Penny Hart, who we just signed back to another year of non-guaranteed on the practice squad. I mean, we have great players on the offensive side. It's just our offensive line is bad and our scheming is atrocious. It's just too simple. It's just too predictable. I have no doubt that we have enough talent on the offensive side and the defensive side to do well. I just think we need a different defensive coordinator because Pete Carroll has said that Brian Schottenheimer is going to be coming back to be the offensive coordinator most likely next season. And he said that he wants to run the ball better. I don't know if that means he wants to run the ball more or wants to run the ball differently, but he wants to run the ball better, and we'll see how that goes. But really, I hope that we can get more creative with our scheming. Even if we have some kind of weird, funky plays that don't work out, I'd like to see us run those to at least get the defenses on their toes, or, get them to actually react to something rather than just have Russell Wilson try to escape a pocket that's collapsing every single play and then make a big play to a receiver that has to basically see that Russell Wilson's escaping and do something to get open because the original play didn't work. We need to fix the scheming. If that's with Brian Schottenheimer or without Brian Schottenheimer, we need to do something to completely change the scheme of the offense. I think the defense is good enough. We just need to have a better scheme. Honestly, Ken Norton did pretty well, adjusting in the second half of the season to make the defense work better when people started to get healthy. I think some of that might be Pete Carroll because he is a great defensive coach, but really, our defense did well enough in the second half of the season for if we had that exact defense playing that exact way for the entire season next year where we're giving up 18, 23 points a game, anywhere between there, and our offense could put up 30 points a game, we could do really well. But our offense is just too simple. And when our defense started to work, our offense just started to play atrocious. It's just really unfortunate how the Seahawks were this year. We had a ton of talent. We had a great, offense. We had a great defense, just a horrible offensive line. Our defensive line actually looked really good in that second half of the season. Something worked out with the scheme. And I think that we just need a scheme change on both sides of the football, or at least, get the defense to play the same. We definitely need a scheme change on the offensive side. That is no question. But going into this offseason with the limited money we have and the limited draft picks, I'm not too worried, honestly, because we don't need that much talent when it comes to players. We need a different scheme offensively, like I said, and the defense is already really good. We could pick some guys up later in rounds. We had Alton Robinson playing really well. We'll have Darrell Taylor back next year because apparently Pete Carroll has been saying that he's looking great right now. He just couldn't play because he was still dealing with a little bit of an injury, but next year he'll probably come in, look really good. Jamal Adams is going to have 2 surgeries over the offseason, but he'll probably come back healthy before the next season. That'll be great to have. But I mean, really, we have a lot of talent. We need to focus on the offensive line with whatever money we can and whatever draft picks we can. We have a second round pick. We don't have a first or a third. Honestly, I don't think that's too bad of a problem. Our first round pick would have been or in the 20s. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference for us. Third round pick, it will be disappointing to only have one pick in the first 2 days of the NFL draft. But the Seahawks are pretty good at drafting later round talents that end up panning out well. Like Alton Robinson, 5th round guy, looked really good. And we also had Freddie Swain. He looked really good. He's a late round guy. Colby Parkinson, he looked pretty good in the limited snaps, the limited opportunities that he was given. Damian Lewis was a 3rd round pick. Maybe we could get someone like that in the 2nd round. We'll get another offensive line piece that can be young and we can build around with other people that we get in free agency or drafts in later years. I mean, we have possibilities to do really well next season. We're not going to collapse next season because of talent. We would collapse because of scheming and just failure from the coaches and the offensive coordinators and the defensive coordinators and stuff like that. I don't think when it comes to the talent perspective, the Seahawks are bad in any place other than the offensive line. Maybe we could get some better, faster corners that are better at covering because, you know, the corners didn't play great in the first half of the season. We had some pretty bad plays, you know, a couple bad plays in the second half. But really, I think defensively, we have the talent to do well. Offensively, we have the talent to do great if we can fix this offensive line. I don't think it's a problem that we don't have money or we don't have a lot of draft picks. I think we can do well with what we have in this offseason. Obviously, we're going to be limited, but going into next season, I think we'll be absolutely fine with what we have. If we can re-sign Shaquille Griffin, we can re-sign a couple other guys. Chris Carson can come back maybe. Really, I just hope that we can keep this team together as much as possible. Add another couple pieces from the draft, maybe get a couple little guys from the free agency, and really just continue to build with what we have, fix the offensive line, change the scheme, and I think we could be a great team next season once again. But with that, that's going to do it for this video. Really, just the Seahawks' predictability and their poor scheming is their main issue, along with their offensive line. I don't think there's any issue with the wide receivers, the tight ends, the quarterback position, the running backs. I don't think defense has a huge issue when it comes to talent. Just a matter of scheming and offensive line that I think we could change, and that could easily make us a better team going into next year, at least a more dynamic team. I want us to play more dynamic with how many amazing playmakers that we have on both sides of the football. But let me know down below in the comments what you thought about this. Let me know what you think the problems are for the Seahawks. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. Have a great day.